So there's a saying, out with the old, in with the new. So does that mean I just replaced my old Seiko Grand Seiko for the all-new rebranded Grand Seiko? What's up guys, it's your boy Rich here, back at it again. And today's show is a little different because it is the first episode where a viewer sent in his own personal watch for me to review. And in this case, David sent me his brand new Grand Seiko SBGR261. So what do you say we go compare his Grand Seiko with my Seiko Grand Seiko? Let's do it. And here they are, two Grand Seikos. This is mine with the dual dial, the Seiko Grand Seiko SBGR097, and this is the all-new rebranded Grand Seiko SBGR261. Let's start with mine first here. This is in 42 millimeters, and it uses the 9S61 automatic movement, and it comes with the bracelet and is available to have a strap put on it as well. And now let's get to the all-new rebranded Grand Seiko. This is in a marvelous 39.5 millimeters, and I think it's just a shade over 13 millimeters thick. It actually might be 13.1 to be exact, and I don't think there is a huge height difference between both of these. I know mine is obviously bigger at 42 millimeters than this, but they look to be about the same in thickness. I just don't remember how thick mine is. So the thickness on both of these are pretty same, but let's look and see how they fit on the wrist. So here it is on the wrist here. And now let's take a look at the SBGR097. And here it is in 42 millimeters. It sits pretty similarly to on the wrist in terms of height-wise. I don't think this one is really any thicker than the SBGR261. Very nice smooth seconds hands on both of them. Look at that effortless glide. Very nice, very nice. This has a lovely blued seconds hand there, if you can see that, and a date window. And this uses Grand Seiko's 9S65 movement, which is basically their 9S67 movement without the power reserve indicator. And both watches have 3 days of power reserve. Here's a nice shot of both movements. They're both very similar in the looks and the decorations of their movements. This is a really nicely done strap, a really thickly padded, genuine alligator strap with a nice deployment clasp here with the Grand Seiko branding right there. That's kind of engraved in there into the buckle. This is just very, very nicely done. Very tasteful. Of course, the biggest difference is the rebranding, where the new models have dropped the Seiko up here completely in favor of GS Grand Seiko. And I am in favor of this. I really like this because I just think the GS Grand Seiko font is just so terrific. It is really beautiful. And that's where my eyes go whenever I look at my watch. When I wear my watch, I'm not staring at the Seiko name up here. I'm looking down here where it says GS Grand Seiko because I just think that's probably the most elegant font of any watch, and that's where my eyes go. And most people's eyes don't go up here, even if it's a Rolex. People don't look down here and see it's a Submariner or a Yachtmaster or a Speedmaster for Omega. Everyone's eyes go up here to whatever branding it is: Rolex, Omega, Seiko. And it's not that I don't like the Seiko name or not proud of the Seiko name. I just think that the Grand Seiko font is just, I've always stated this, that I really, really like it, and that's why I look at it. So I don't mind at all with it being rebranded like this. And I did do a video a long time ago, if some of you might remember, but even though this has the Seiko Grand Seiko on the dial, I can have this dial replaced with the all-new Grand Seiko because the size of the dials remain the same as the older models here. I will not have this blue. I will lose the blue and the special GS that is embedded in there. Let's see if it shows. I'm having a hard time for it showing here, but it's there. I will lose that. So that will not represent the 55th anniversary Grand Seiko anymore if I ever decide to have that dial changed. And I think the color options limits me to either black or white, maybe cream. I wouldn't have this blue anymore if I decided to change it out for the all-new Grand Seiko branding. And so here they are. Which dial do you guys like better? The dual Seiko Grand Seiko or the newly rebranded Grand Seiko across the dial? That's a tough call. They both look really elegant either way. I was wondering how I would feel about the newly rebranded Grand Seikos in person, and I do like it in person a lot, as you can see here. This is just incredibly tasteful, but there's not anything not to like. I might have had a tongue twister on this one as well. They're just both really different, so let me know which dial is your guys' preference. Though there was no such offer on the table and David did not present me with this is just one of my own hypothetical situations because we like to do that around here. But what if I was offered to trade my Seiko Grand Seiko for his new Grand Seiko SBGR261? Would I do it? Would I pull the trigger? Well, I don't know, because there are three really great examples of why I like my Seiko Grand Seiko. One, I like the dial on it, that embedded GS all over that special blue dial, because it is the 55th anniversary. I also like the 42 millimeter size, which is still in my sweet spot. And I like that it's available in a bracelet. On the other hand, the new Grand Seiko offers a lot of uniqueness to it, especially just dropping the Seiko name for the Grand Seiko. And whenever I look at my watch, as I said, I don't look at the Seiko name on the top. I look at the Grand Seiko part. So I'm glad that it is front and centered on the top, because that's where my eyes go to whenever I want to stare at that gorgeous font. And that's what that offers. I also like its 39.5 millimeter case size as well. I think that is a really elegant size, and that also works for me. It falls also within my sweet spot, with 42 being on the larger side of my sweet spot. And wow, does Grand Seiko know how to make a leather strap. That leather strap is really, really special. It is a great alligator strap. Now, as far as the date window or the date complication on there, part of the reason that I went with my SBGR097 is because it didn't have a date. And I always felt that a Grand Seiko looks better without a date on any Grand Seiko model. But the more time I spent with this Grand Seiko with the date feature or date window, I kind of get it. I get it why so many people do like the date. It's not that I am anti-date. I like date features very much on a lot of watches. For some reason, I just never thought it looked appropriate on a Grand Seiko. But as I said, I am starting to get it. One other reason in favor of the Seiko Grand Seiko is it is a limited edition. So that's actually a fourth plus to me on my Grand Seiko over the new Grand Seiko. So what's the verdict? Would I trade my Seiko Grand Seiko for the all-new Grand Seiko? No. As much as I liked Grand Seiko's leather straps, I still like having the option of a bracelet. And as much as that date window has grown on me, it hasn't fully taken me over yet. But my answer could change tomorrow, or in 1 hour, or if I did one more take. That's how elegant the new Grand Seikos are. Their new font across the top with that rebranding really makes a huge difference. Thanks again, David, for trusting me and for sending me your brand new Grand Seiko. In fact, I like it a little too much that you might not be getting it back. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you the next time. Hey guys, thanks for making it to the end of the show. And if you're still here, I thought I would try a little something of an experiment, which is more of a podcast style segment in case I want to pursue having a podcast series. And I just couldn't figure out a way to incorporate this in earlier without disrupting the flow of the show. So let me know what you guys think. But let's start with the name. How did Grand Seiko get its name? Well, it got its name because at the time it was just a prototype. It was not a collection. And ever since then, it stuck. So why Grand Seiko? I think, Grand Seiko has to be the most disruptive luxury brand in the entire watch industry. I mean, it has a lot of haters, and it seems for every hater, there seems to be 2 or 3 Grand Seiko lovers that are ready to pounce and emphatically declare Grand Seiko as a top watch. Grand Seiko has that kind of a following. So I want to continue to touch on what Grand Seiko haters will lament. We will often hear them exclaim, why would anyone in their right mind spend a few $1,000s on a Grand Seiko when you can get a Seiko for $100 and nobody can tell that it's not a Seiko because it says Seiko? Well, there is truth to that because yes, there are Seikos for under $100, but Grand Seiko owners don't wear a Grand Seiko for flash or for attention. We could afford to wear watches or other brands of watches that would command a certain flash or attention. But I would argue, as someone who does have a Rolex, that people will look at a Rolex a little differently because it's fairly common and they've seen it before. But they will hold their gaze longer on a Grand Seiko simply because when they look at it, they'll see, how can a Seiko be so beautiful? Because it is a stunning looking watch, especially in person. And that's the reason people will hold their gaze longer on a Grand Seiko than they would for a Rolex. And Grand Seiko haters will continue along the vein as, why would anybody want a Lexus? Because a Lexus is the same car as a Toyota. Well, that's just not true. When Lexus made cars early on, yes, they did share some parts. They would share the same chassis. But today, they don't share any parts in common. They don't have anything in common except maybe the same financial institution because they are their own brands and cars. And if we're going to continue along that line, we might as well argue that, well, a Bentley or a Bugatti or a Lamborghini or a Porsche is really a Volkswagen, because Volkswagen owns those brands. And that's kind of a silly argument. So at some point, this kind of nonsensical argument has to stop. And I think the perception, or part of the problem with the perception of Grand Seiko, is that it is a newcomer because they've been only recently available in the US, actually kind of recently within a few years, but that's just not true at all. Grand Seiko has been around since 1960. And one of the arguments we make in favor of a luxury Swiss watch is that it has to have history behind it. And Grand Seiko has some of the most fantastic, or carries some fantastic history behind it, that I'm not so sure why we are so dismissive of Grand Seiko's history. Actually, I probably have my own reasons for why that is. But as terms of the history, I mean, one of my favorite stories is the Neuchâtel chronometer testing, where it was a competition for the most accurate watch movements. And, when Grand Seiko started, I think I read somewhere that they finished in 144th place in 1960. And then by 1967, they were finished in the top 10. So they moved up quite steadily. And then by 1968, this is where the conspiracists come in, because the Neuchâtel testing abruptly ended in 1968, and a lot of people were speculating that it's because Grand Seiko was poised to take first place and that they did not want to give first place to a non-Swiss brand. And I actually buy into that one. That one to me makes sense because there's another point that would support that, because Grand Seiko didn't just stop there. They moved on to the Geneva competition, which is another similar testing. The Geneva competition was the equivalent for accuracy, and Grand Seiko received, they received 4th through 10th place, and they were only beaten by a prototype quartz movement, which took 1st to 3rd. This made Grand Seiko movements the most accurate mechanical watch movements in the world. So there is no reason to believe that they wouldn't have done the same with the Neuchâtel competition. So I think I'll end it here. I'll end this podcast experiment here, and we'll see how that goes. All right, thanks again, guys. Thanks again, David, for sending me and trusting me with your brand new Grand Seiko, and for sending me in your coffee. David is the owner of Cyan Coffee, which is a wellness coffee made with real mushrooms, and I can tell you that it is really different and unique in a good way. So, what's the deal? What's the dealio? What's up, guys? It's your boy Rich here, back at it again. Verdict. So, what's the verdict? As much as I like Grand Seiko straps, as much